Wanted to address the wrap up of the Michael Cohen testimony and the trial itself. There's been a lot of talk on the Republican side about how Michael Cohen admitted to stealing $30,000. And of course, like everything else in the Republican side of the arguments, it's taken out of context, and the full weight of the conversation and testimony isn't taken into account. Now, what he was referring to with that is there was a company called Red Finch, which actually paid to influence polls, which is kind of an applicable game plan to what's going on today. And all these polls, there's rumors going around. Donald Trump pays to influence everything. He pays people to show up at his rallies. He has central casting folks left and right, filling up the seats so it looks bigly. And you know this because in the middle of a rally, you'll see 30% like on cue. Everyone stands up and leaves. Now, if you're at a concert, if you're at a festival, you're whatever, there's going to be dribbles and drabbles of people walking in and out. I mean, that's just the way it is. But for a huge group, unrelated, just standing up and leaving, think hard about that. If you wanted to go see someone you're really, really passionate about, number one, you probably wouldn't leave early or you were not that passionate about. But if you and a whole bunch of unrelated people stand up from your chairs and leave within the same 5 minutes, your time clock's up. You're no longer being paid to be there. So you leave because you don't want to work for free. And Donald Trump is famous for not paying anybody. Now, in the trial, and how this relates to the trial, they were going through in the cross-examination, one of the only things Todd Blanche, Trump's lawyer, cross-examined Michael Cohen about was about a $50,000 payment that was specifically to reimburse money from paying for one of the polls of the best businessman, I think was the subject of this poll, and it only got him to 9th place. Donald Trump thought $50,000 was, should be a lot higher than 9th place on this legitimate poll that shows he was one of the best businessmen. He didn't like his placement in the poll, so he tried to screw him out of the money. Michael Cohen paid him because under direct orders, not pay him the full amount, paid him the $20,000. Michael Cohen at the same time was being screwed out of hundreds of thousands of dollars in a bonus that he was promised for doing all the crap that Donald Trump has him do. So in that moment, as he's being screwed, as he's not asked to join Donald Trump in the White House, as basically Donald Trump screwing him over in every way, shape, or form, blaming him for all this stuff that he did and all that, Michael Cohen had already made arrangements to leave peacefully with the golden parachute that he never collected. So he did not give Donald Trump back the extra $30,000 because he was still owed a whole bunch of money. So them saying that he stole $30,000 really isn't accurate. It's a perspective. And in the grand scheme of things, there's still a big bill. So that gotcha moment the only gotcha moment for the Donald Trump team actually shows they were paying to have ranking on a poll. That's number one, and very, very important thing to not lose in all of this. So Trump is bribing the people who put on polls to give him. Think about that. He has these rallies that say 100,000 people, 80,000 people, when in fact it's 3,000 people and 10,000 people. Everything is about the show. When this trial wrapped up, we already had mapped out the illegality of what went on, what made this a crime. Because if you remember correctly, paying off somebody to be quiet isn't a crime. Doing it in the process to interfere with an election and doing it through false business records is a crime. Now, we have David Pecker, the publisher of the National Enquirer, put out $150,000 for Karen McDougal. under this agreement. That was laid out in detail, corroborated not only by David Pecker, but corroborated by Michael Cohen, corroborated by Stormy Daniels, corroborated by emails, phone calls, texts, everything else. Solid evidence done that this was the deal in order to influence the election. David Pecker himself was asked on the stand how much money AMI, National Enquirer, would have made running these stories. And he said himself, in the millions. It would have been very, very profitable for the newspaper. He did it specifically to help Donald Trump and the campaign. He also gave Donald Trump an opportunity to write negative stories about his opponents. This was all documented in this case. So when people say they didn't prove anything, these 34 charges, this is what's important. Yes, it takes one juror for a hung jury. But these 34 charges, each one of these charges has different categories to confirm guilt. The jurors don't have to agree that every single charge has every single direction of maliciousness, of criminality. All they have to agree is, yeah, I can see one of these 3 to 5 different versions of criminality in every single charge. Or I can see 1 to 5 in one charge. Doesn't have to be everything. It doesn't have to be unanimous up and down. So that's another thing that the MAGAverse is pushing, that it only takes one to, there's a lot more to it than that. And when you look at the brass tacks of it and you look at what needs to be proven in order to secure people saying yes beyond the shadow of a doubt, obviously there was a conspiracy to influence the election. That has been proven. We have David Pecker. We have Dylan, who was the personal assistant, the right hand of David Pecker, in an email saying that it's amazing knowing that they had something to do with Donald Trump becoming president. At least now he can pardon me when I'm charged with election interference. That came out during the trial as well. That was in an email. That was the level of evidence that was put out in this case. So yes, Michael Cohen, like him or hate him, he provided documents. He provided evidence. There were notes saying that this was a payment directly to him for Stormy Daniels. They had to pay extra money because paying him as income would have cost him 50% of the $130,000. And Michael Cohen wasn't going to have that, so they paid him extra. Alan Weisselberg wrote those notes on the piece of that paper. Donald Trump signed off on them. Donald Trump did not sign any checks any checks, that were over $10,000 without inspecting them. Donald Trump was the only signature on the trust account, the Donald J. Trump Trust, which paid Michael Cohen. All of that evidence was put out too. The comptrollers from Trump.org, that still worked there and has worked there for 20, 30 years. They were on the stand. So every little piece of this was spelled out pretty clearly. And when the cross-examinations happened with Stormy Daniels and Michael Cohen and stuff like that, Todd Blanche and Donald Trump's lawyers would ask questions that Donald Trump wanted them to ask. For Stormy Daniels, right out of the gate, is it true that Donald Trump's one of the best golfers that you've... Is it true that there's always tons of people following him around? Those are the questions. That's not a serious case. Donald Trump is relying on the behind-the-scenes scumbaggery to get him off of this. He's relying on his Republican friends. He's relying on the Supreme Court. He's relying on all of this. We need to see past these cases, and we need to look at the actual evidence. And we need to recognize that the documents that are brought up and the supporting documents show the truth. It's not about politics. Most of all, we need to be diligent. We need to stay educated. about all of this, and we need to be kind because we are in this together.